Hello and welcome to Idaho Bigfoot. I'm your host, Jep, and today I'm joined once again by my lovely assistant, Ushi. You want to say hi to the camera? No? Okay. Today we're talking about some topics that a lot of people would generally lump into the woo-woo side of Bigfoot research, which is really just to say that people don't have physical explanations for things. They jump to paranormal explanations. And I've had paranormal experiences in my life. I kind of went into that a little bit in my last video, but, I had a Bigfoot encounter, or an encounter that looked like it was a Bigfoot, but the entire thing didn't line up with what most people report for Bigfoot. And so I've never really made a big stink about it. The longer I've thought about that encounter, I don't think it is Bigfoot. So at the end of the day, I am cautious about talking about woo topics, but I feel like there should be logical explanations for things. That's what the channel is all about: doing research, but also doing some intellectual research as well, and trying to do some discussions, but also doing these arguments justice by not just straw manning them, but actually trying to see if there's anything to them. And hopefully you guys enjoy this content. Please share it around if you do. But at the end of the day, a lot of people think of auras and go, oh, woo. And a lot of people hear about Bigfoot disappearing from thermals and think it's all just garbage. And it could be. Expedition Bigfoot had a couple accounts of that, I think.
Right there. That's the thing. Right there, right there. There it is. Oh my gosh. There's two.
And ultimately, Expedition Bigfoot is not a show that I watch anymore, and I do not take the show seriously because they showed that they are willing to lie for, entertainment purposes. When you watch Thinker Thunker's video, although some of his videos aren't that great, he'll give Mark Anders hoaxes or probable hoaxes new life by acting like they could be legitimate. That's a big complaint a lot of people have had, and I can't prove that Mark Anders is a hoaxer, but I think he is. And when you look at that skeleton that he did for the Patterson-Gimlin footage, I mean, that's just laughable. The hip is in the completely wrong spot, and I can't help but just kind of chuckle when I look at it because he doesn't need to do that. But we'll get into that in another video. His audio research, though, is pretty good. And at least the video that he did about the Expedition Bigfoot kind of hoaxing event where they hoaxed howls, and he proved that they hoaxed it. And I thought that was a great video. It's been a little bit since I watched it, so maybe I missed something, but I remember really liking that video. But doubtless they did show some Bigfoots, or at least one Bigfoot disappearing from a thermal, and they made a big deal out of that, and they're definitely promoting the paranormal side of Bigfootery, which I think is inappropriate in some ways. But if people like it, they like it. It's up to people to decide how they feel on things. I don't feel like you should, have a stranglehold on any one topic and control it too well. But I do believe that, logic and reason needs to be a little bit more promoted out there. So hopefully this will kind of help people reason on it. But doubtless, me and Dad, a couple years back, were kind of talking about this in the car as we were driving to a hunting location to go do some deer hunting. And, it just really got me thinking, is there any way that we can logically explain that? And I think there is. So we're going to go into what auras are, what they actually are. A lot of people have kind of their predetermined thoughts on that, so please bear with me. There is a real thing to it. There is definitely something there. If you've ever walked into a room and felt the energy change, if you've ever been in a room like I have and felt the energy change, or kind of felt that someone's bad when they walked into a room, there's one notable experience I had where we were in, you could call it a church, and this guy walked in, and I immediately knew I hated him. I knew I didn't like him, and that's strong wording for me because I'm typically someone that goes, well, I second guess myself, but I knew there was something wrong about this guy, and I tried putting my feelings aside, really tried making sure that I wasn't just being biased against him, because a lot of people, they'll just run with their feelings. I don't. for better or for worse. And no, in time, he really did prove that I was right. My gut feeling was correct. He was a bad man, a very bad man. And that's not the first time that's happened, but that's the most recent example. That was only a couple of years back. And so, you know, we do feel energy. It's a little hard for us to pinpoint exactly how or why. And, there is something to auras, but it's often utilized in woo discussions. People who are, healers use discussions about auras, and they claim that they can see it, and it just goes way too far south for people. It just devolves, and so they naturally don't think auras are real, or they think that it's just not worth their time, something. But there's something to it. And then we're also going to go into how they can actually evade thermal cameras, and it isn't woo at all. It has to do with the freeze response. That's not one that's talked about a lot. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fight, of course, we know what that is, and the flight, we know what that is. But freeze isn't talked about so much, yet it's extremely common. So let's dive in here. Enough babbling. If you do want to know how I feel about cloaking, then please watch the video, Why I Believe Sasquatch Cannot Cloak and What I Believe Can, plus Mind Speak Debunked, sort of. I think that's the full title. It's close to that. I do give the Mind Speak stuff a chance, but I go into ultimately what I believe people are hearing, and it's not just a throwaway, oh, you're just crazy type response. It's actually going into what people may be experiencing. And then also with the cloaking, what I believe people are experiencing, because people are seeing something. Barbara Shoup, I believe, was her name. She was in a interview with the documentary crew, A Flash of Beauty, but it was like the paranormal Bigfoot one that they did more recently. They've done two, I think. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I've watched one or two little interviews here and there. And, she was talking about how she recorded that thing cloaking. And everyone assumes that's a Bigfoot. The only reason to assume it was a Bigfoot was because it was out in the woods. Right? That's not a strong line of reasoning. That's jumping to conclusions. I get why, but ultimately it is jumping to conclusions. So that video goes into the explanation for what people are possibly seeing, or actually I think likely seeing, but I am a little biased. Please watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. But when it comes to this will be a good video for you. So to start us off, there is a paper here called Cardiac Torsion and Electromagnetic Fields, a Cardiac Bioinformation Hypothesis. It was written by Catherine Burleson and Gary Schwartz from the Center for Frontier Medicine and Biofield Science, University of Arizona. Here's what they wrote. Although in physiology the heart is often referred to as a simple piston pump, there are in fact two additional features that are integral to cardiac physiology and function. First, the heart, as it contracts in systole, also rotates and produces torsion due to the structure of the myocardium. Second, the heart produces a significant electromagnetic field with each contraction due to the coordinated depolarization of myocytes, producing a current flow. Unlike the electrocardiogram, the magnetic field is not limited to volume conduction and extends outside the body. The therapeutic potential for interaction of this cardio-electromagnetic field, both within and outside the body, is largely unexplored. It is our hypothesis that the heart functions as a generator of bioinformation that is central to normative functioning of body. The source of this bioinformation is based on 1. Vortex blood flow in the left ventricle, 2. A cardiac electromagnetic field in both 3. Heart sounds, and 4. Pulse pressure, which produce frequency and amplitude information. Thus, there is a multidimensional role for the heart in physiology and biopsychosocial dynamics. Recognition of these cardiac properties may result in significant implications for new therapies for cardiovascular disease based on increasing cardiac energy efficiency, coherence, and bioinformation from the cardio-electromagnetic field. Research studies to test this hypothesis are suggested. So that was a lot, but the heart does produce an electromagnetic field with each contraction. And we'll get into that more here in a moment. Next is the paper Biomagnetism, the First 60 Years. It was written by Bradley J. Roth. He's a PhD from Oakland's Oakland University's Department of Physics. He does biological physics research using theoretical and computation methods with an emphasis on bioelectric and biomagnetic phenomena. He wrote, "Biomagnetism is the measurement of the weak magnetic fields produced by nerves and muscle. The magnetic field of the heart, the magnetocardiogram, MCG, is the largest biomagnetic signal generated by the body and was the first measured. Magnetic fields have been detected from isolated tissue, such as a peripheral nerve or cardiac muscle, and these studies have provided insights into the fundamental properties of biomagnetism. The magnetic field of the brain, the magnetoencephalogram, MEG, has generated much interest and has potential clinical applications to epilepsy, migraine, and psychiatric disorders. The biomagnetic inverse problem, calculating the electrical sources inside the brain from magnetic field recordings made outside the head, is difficult, but several techniques have been introduced to solve it. Traditionally, biomagnetic fields are recorded using superconducting quantum interference device, SQUID, magnetometers. But recently, new sensors have been developed that allow magnetic measurements without the cryogenic technology required for squids. In 1963, Gerard Bolle and Richard McPhee first measured the magnetic field generated by the human body. Working in a field in Syracuse, New York, they recorded the magnetic fields of the heart, the magnetocardiogram, MCG. To sense the signal, they wound 2 million turns of wire around a dumbbell-shaped ferrite core that responded to the charging magnetic field by electromagnetic induction. The induced voltage in the pickup coil was detected with a low-noise amplifier. The ferrite core was about 1/3 of a meter long, so the magnetic field was not measured at a single point above the chest, but instead was averaged over the entire coil. One question repeatedly examined in this review is spatial resolution. Small detectors are often noisy, and large detectors integrate over the area, creating a trade-off between spatial resolution and the signal-to-noise ratio. The heart's magnetic field is tiny, on the order of 50 to 100 pt. A picotesla, pt, is less than a millionth of a millionth as strong as the magnetic field in a magnetic resonance imaging machine, or MRI. The magnetic field of the Earth is about 30 million picoteslas, and the only reason it does not obscure the heart's field is that the Earth's field is static. That is not strictly true. The Earth's field varies slightly over time, which causes the geomagnetic noise that tends to mask the magnetocardiogram. Moreover, even a perfectly static geomagnetic field would influence the MCG if the pickup coil slightly vibrated. A key challenge in biomagnetic recordings, and a major theme in this review, is the battle to lower the noise enough so the signal is detectable. So this is an important point to note. It is difficult to record the electromagnetic field of the heart because it isn't that strong. But I do feel like that is something to keep in mind. We do produce an electromagnetic field. This is something a lot of people just don't know. And so there are clothing brands, and I swear I know the name. Hex Clothing, I believe. I'll show it on screen. Anyway, they make hunting clothes that are made to block your electromagnetic field. Now, just because a product is made does not mean it works, right? But it is possible that it does. So that may be something for us Bigfoot researchers to look into, and I'll get into that in a minute. Next, I wanted to discuss this question that was posited on Quora, or put forth on Quora. It says, is it possible for the human body to create an electromagnetic field? Now, Jack Fraser answered this. He's a postdoctoral researcher in computational bioinformatics at the Wellcome Sanger Institute. He develops complex computational models and algorithms to study interesting facets of genomes, having previously completed a doctorate in theoretical astrophysics. So this is his answer. He said, is it possible for the human body to create an electromagnetic field? I want you to imagine me punching you hard in the nose. Trust me, it'll help make this description much more fun. Imagine you said something rude about my mother, if it helps. Did that hurt? I'm no fighter, but I imagine it probably did. Why did it hurt? Well, my fist connected rather rapidly with your face, and that ought to do it. But what does it mean to connect or touch? Our bodies are made up of cells, which are made up of atoms, and atoms are, well, they're mostly empty space. An atom is a centralized region of extreme density and positive charge, the nucleus, surrounded by a region of standing probability waves, which describe the wave function of the electron. And he put an image up, and I'll share it with you. It said something like this, and the image credit goes to the electron cloud. Excuse me. It said the planetary orbital model you probably have in your head is about 100 years out of date. It comes from the 1913 Bohr model of the atom, which was superseded in 1925 by the Schrödinger model. He said, so, how can I punch you if your face, and indeed my hand, are made up of fuzzy balls? There's no concept of solid at this level, so why should my hand make contact with your face? The answer lies in the electric field. Every atom has its own electric field, and when you put two atoms close together, they can mess around with the electric field of the other. In some circumstances, this messing around is what leads to atomic bonding. The atoms and their electrons find a way to coexist in a way that minimizes their mutual energy, and they resist being pulled apart. This is what we interpret as an atomic bond. But sometimes it means they just bounce off each other. The two electron fields repel each other, and the atoms go flying apart. So what you experience when my fist connects with your nose is actually the electrons in my fist repelling those in your nose. This repulsion obviously then causes a chain reaction with all the other atoms in your face, which are all mutually interacting with each other, and they all repel in unison from my fist. That's why your nose doesn't atomize into trillions of atoms. Specialized sections of your body then generate electrical signals, which are fired along other specialized sections of your body into a really specialized section of your body, which results in a cascade of electrical signals being transmitted through the entire unit. In other words, the sensors in your nose send a message along the nerves into your brain, which you then process as pain. Ow, you say, what was that for? Don't you see? Everything that just happened was because of the electrical fields of our bodies. Everything you just experienced occurred because we're both surrounded by our own personal force field, and the insides of our bodies contain electrical generators, which they use to send signals through our body. Virtually every single process which is keeping you alive can be traced back to an electric field that some component of your body is creating. Even as I'm typing this, the only thing letting me do it is the electric field in my fingers depressing the keys in my laptop. The only thing stopping me falling through the chair is my body's specialized arse field, which is repelling the chair. My eyes are intercepting the electromagnetic radiation, and let's not even get started on the fact that I am constantly outputting a low-level radiation field in the infrared region, and turning that into yet more electrical signals. Not only is it possible that the human body creates EM fields, it is the only way you can possibly exist as a coherent entity. You are an electric field. A giant electric field which holds your atoms together, and which uses other electric fields to talk to other bits of yourself. So his way of writing that was a little difficult for me to read, actually, but he did a pretty good job. And I thought the arse field was hilarious. But, you know, at the end of the day, in looking into this topic, I found people go, oh, no, we don't create an electric field. We don't. No, we do. As he explained, every single aspect of us creates an electrical field and an electromagnetic field in some areas as well. So, you know, a lot of people talk on a subject that it appears they have absolutely no qualifications to talk about. And it's nice to hear from people that, yes, indeed, we do have an electrical field. There are people who can mess with electronics because their electrical field is just incredibly powerful. And electrical devices just do not do well being in the proximity of those people. And I found they typically have fibromyalgia, which is interacting with your nerves, and they typically have PTSD. And when the two really flare up, that's when you have problems. So, you know, there are people who say, well, the reason why we don't have pictures of Bigfoot and why Bigfoot is blurry is because, you know, cameras don't do well with them. Well, you know, there is a degree of explanation there, I think. But that does not answer everything. It simply does not. I do think there are possible times where that could play a part, but by no means does that mean that, you know, no matter what you do, you'll never catch them on camera. I don't agree with that one bit. But here's my point. Auras are something that we all have in some way, shape, or form, and it's not necessarily what people describe per se, but I think some people can maybe see the electromagnetic fields, and that's what they're picking up on. But doubtless, we do put out energy. And when you're looking at the heart, it's a big source for that electromagnetic field. I think it's probably a big reason why people with autism and horses get along so well, or why people with PTSD and horses get along so well. There are a lot of soldiers that find great companionship with horses, and it seems like the horses really know right away that that person needs help. Oh, you don't say. When you deal with people who are mentally handicapped, people who are autistic, nonverbal, especially when you really start going down into the Down syndrome type areas, some of these poor people, have problems. Some of them don't. Some of them do, but horses are still able, it seems, to really figure that out right away. And of course, there's the visual aspect. Someone with Down syndrome does look different than most people do, but there are some people who don't really look all that different, but they have autism, and it seems like the horses know. There are people who don't look all that different, but they have bad PTSD, and the horses know. So there's more going on here than just visual acuity. Oh, they can see that this person looks different. That doesn't answer hardly anything in my eyes. I think they can sense your energy, and you do put out an energy field, as we just showed there. You know when you're dealing with people that aren't good sometimes. When they really don't like you, you can tell. You get that feeling of something's wrong. We've learned to shut that out and go, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Like I talked about earlier, I think. I've taken a couple different takes of this video. So anyway, I've been able to sense when people are bad occasionally. Sometimes I'm not able to, though. Sometimes I'm just blind to it. I typically go, well, yeah, and I push it aside thinking I'm wrong. And I think that is the safest thing you can do in some ways, because if they are wrong, no one can look at you and say that you're the problem, right? You do have to kind of deal with things like a politician would, keeping in mind how you look to other people. You can't be adversarial toward anyone. At the outset, you need to wait for them to be aggressive before you can be defensive. So even if you feel like there's something going on, you have to handle it cautiously. So that way they're the ones that look bad to other people and not you. So you don't get ganged up on, which is awful. But a lot of people don't really care, or sometimes they do care, I think, and they like to bully and pick on people. But anyway, there have been times, though, where I haven't picked up on those vibes at all. So sometimes other people are just blind to it, and you're the only one that can tell. My parents, both of them, have had occasions where one of them felt bad vibes from someone and the other one didn't. Sometimes I'm the only one that picks up on it. Sometimes, my dad's the only one that picked up on it and said, hey, and let me know that I don't like this person too much. So there are times when we all can feel something that the others can't, and there are times when we all just feel the exact same way because it's just that obvious. But doubtless, we can sense energy. Like Bill Engvall said, his skit about going into a bar and it's just the wrong place for you, and you hear that little voice in the back of your head go, oop, wrong bar. Right? You can tell. And horses, I think, can tell as well. And it makes sense because we're group, social-oriented creatures, okay? We have to be able to pick up on the emotions of the other individuals around us, our fellow man. And horses naturally have to do that as well. Herd animals need to be in touch with the other members of their herd. So it makes sense that we can pick up on things like that, and why they can pick up on things like that. To me, at least, it makes perfect sense. But here's one thing I wanted to talk about, that freeze effect. What do people commonly report in their eyewitness sightings? There are times when people have reported, and it seems pretty common to me, where they saw a funny looking tree, but it was a high cut off, maybe burnt stump. It was just kind of there, and they never really noticed it before, but okay. Like I remember hearing one guy talk about how, I don't remember where it came from, I'm sorry, but he was walking to his blind. It was kind of dark. It was early morning, and he saw one of these high cut stumps, and he's tired. He's not really focused on it. He's like, well, that's odd, and he walked over to his tree stand and he climbed up and, it wasn't moving or anything, and he wasn't really focused on it. And then eventually he looked back, and if I remember correctly, it was just gone. Then there are other occasions where people will actively see the tree stump, get up, and walk away. Or maybe not get up, but it's no longer hunched over. It just kind of stands up tall and it walks off. In other words, it wasn't a tree stump, it was a Bigfoot. And when you're looking at a Bigfoot that's a darkish brown, a black color, they can look like a cut off tree stump. And when you tuck your shoulders down, here, let's get that off you. Maybe that's what's making you uncomfortable. Yeah. When you are tucking your head down, you have your arms by your side. There have been people I've seen there where it looked like they were the headless horsemen. I mean, they don't have a neck or skull, it seemed, because they were able to tuck their head down far enough to where when I was standing behind them, I couldn't see their head. And I thought that was hilarious. But that's actually something that people do report in their Bigfoot sightings. And then you add to the fact that Bigfoot do tend to have a hunch. In most of the reportings, most of the eyewitness sightings I've heard of, they have a hunch. They're hunched over, which could just be a product of being tall, right? Tall people do tend to hunch. I have to fight that myself because I do tend to do that, and I'm not that tall. I'm only about 6'1". But, there are people out there who are very tall, and they have to hunch quite a bit because doorways and whatnot get in their way. Well, what do you find out in forest? A lot of branches and a lot of sharp ones especially that will try and hit you and whap you in the head. Cedar branches are the worst. If you've ever tried breaking them to get them out of your way, you know what I'm talking about. They'll try and hit you in the face. They won't break easily. They're just god awful. I hate cedar branches. You have to bring a machete and you have to hit them just right to break them, or you have to get a big old stick and you have to try and hit them with the stick and hope that they'll break and not swing back at you. It's just awful. I hate them. But doubtless, you're looking at something that's tall. You have to duck and weave a lot when you're out in the woods. How much more so something that's a foot, 2 foot, 2.5 feet taller than you. So, yeah, a lot of these things do tend to hunch over, and there's reported sightings. And you're looking at something that has typically long flowing hair. And when you combine those two features, I think that it really does make it look like they don't have a neck. And if you're actively trying to tuck your head in even further and you're keeping your hands by your side, you have long enough hair that's pretty unison in color, unicolor. You're not looking at clothing where you have definitive lines, edges, different colors, different materials, shades. You're looking at a figure that can effectively blend into its environment just like someone wearing a ghillie suit would. But instead of looking like just the forest environment, you're looking at something that looks like a tree, a high cut-off stump that's maybe burnt somewhat. And if that's their freeze response, if that's something that they've learned to do, and they go into their freeze response, what happens is their heart will slow down. And I didn't print it out, but I do have a paper here. Okay, I had to re-Google it. Turned out I changed the page. But I looked into what actually happens with the freeze response. I meant to print it out. Basically, you become physically immobile. You can't move. And your heart rate drops. And your breathing rate drops. And your muscles tense up. You just kind of lock in. And so it's not far off from a possum's response, but a possum just plays dead and tries not to breathe at all. Freeze response is basically like what a rabbit does. When you're walking by it, it tries to freeze up so you don't see it. Deer do that. A lot of other animals do that. If Bigfoot have learned, especially if they were around and evolved somewhat during the time of the last glacial epoch, in the Pleistocene era, you had the giant short-faced bear, you had the American lion, Smilodons, Homotherium. At least I believe Homotherium was one of the ones that was out in America. But anyway, you had some big cats. Let's put it that way. It's big cats. You have that massive bear. You're looking at big predators, basically. And Bigfoot would not be able to kill a giant short-faced bear, and they would not be able to kill an American lion or two. I'm saying that as fact because you're looking at something that doesn't have the same kind of weapons that they do, and they are disadvantaged in almost every respect. Yeah, they can be strong, but more than likely they became as tall as they are in a response to this environment, And I think really the tallest ones were the ones that were able to scare off the predators and were the ones least likely to be attacked. The smallest ones were the ones that were easier prey and were the ones that were targeted. And so over time, the breeding population narrowed down to individuals that were basically as big and tall as they could be. Within reason, I don't think Sasquatch get any taller than 8, maybe 8.5 feet for the males. I think most of the time you're looking at 7 to 8 feet in height, which is perfectly attainable for human beings, at least the 7-foot range. Like Angus McGaskill, I think he was 7'8". So you're looking at something that is attainable for human beings without having any kind of dysfunctional pituitary gland type issues. You're looking at something that's natural, biologically attainable. And I think they became naturally selected to be tall because of the predatory constraints and pressures in their environment, because of the predatory influences in their environment and pressures in their environment. So you're looking at something that had to adapt to these massive predators, because the American lion was huge, as was the Smilodon, as was the giant short-faced bear. Giant short-faced bear was actually incredibly big. And when you really think about it, I mean, you know, an 8-foot tall Sasquatch is pretty big, but I think it would be pretty much a mismatch in some ways unless they're able to just scare off the creature. And that could be where the rock throwing came in. You can throw things at it. You get that projectile weaponry going. I think they may have lost the ability to make tools, but that's an entirely different video. You'll see why I say that, though, in time. But I do believe that being able to throw allowed them to hit prey, like grouse, turkeys, even deer with the right kind of rock. You can hit them in the head, you can kill them, at least wound them, and then actually deliver the killing blow. I think that's partially why they may have avoided some of the low-lying areas, because that's probably where the majority of predators were. And I think that the freeze response may have been developed not in response to us as much as it was in response to some of those other predators. If you are sensitive to energy, like I think a lot of animals are, predators can tell when you're scared. Predators are the best at reading body language, and they can probably sense how you're feeling to a degree as well. Especially if your heart rate is really kicking up because you're getting scared. Oh, what does that do to your heart field? It starts to increase probably, doesn't it? They may not be able to figure out exactly what's going on, but they can sense it. Well, here's the point. If you're able to freeze in place and blend into your environment really, really well, a predator may pass right by you without even knowing you're there. I think that it makes sense. And for us as well, if we're used to feeling other people's energy, anything that's living, we're used to feeling that energy. You get near something that isn't putting out that energy and it blends in really well to your environment, you're going to be blind to it. You're not going to know it's there unless it moves, right? Our vision is based on movement. The way our eyes work is that once we see a pattern and we're able to cognitively recognize it, then we're able to recognize it quicker and quicker and quicker as time goes on. But if we don't recognize the pattern in the first place, we're blind to it until it starts moving and it catches our attention. When you're looking at a Bigfoot, if it's holding still, you're not going to see it. You can pass right by it. There's a lot of outdoorsmen that go, "Oh, I've never seen a Bigfoot." Well, first of all, there's one of those fellows that can be very arrogant, or is very arrogant. And he's never really said anything about Bigfoot because I never brought it up to him. But someone I know and like and trust fairly well said that she saw him walk right by some mule deer and not even realize it. Actually, I think that she saw him at someone's door, and there were mule deer kind of walking up behind him, looking at him, and there were a few of them, a couple bucks too, I seem to remember hearing, but basically just mule deer. And they disappeared by the time he turned around and walked back. And she said, "Oh, did you see those mule deer?" "Oh, there were no mule deer. I would have seen them if they were out here." And she couldn't help but laugh because it's like, I should have taken a picture, but they were right there, and he never even recognized that they were there. That's really simplifying the story without giving too many details. But, you know, there are times when I think people get very, very close to something and they never realize it was there. It's like the ketchup bottle in the fridge. You're looking for it and you can't find it. It's like when you're looking for a DVD and you're looking for the name and you're looking and looking and looking, and it takes a couple times before you find it. Even when it is a pattern that we recognize, sometimes it takes a while for us to actually hone in on it. When you're dealing with a pattern you've never recognized before, and especially if you're arrogant, you think that it doesn't exist. You know, I've seen some people, loggers especially, tend to be very arrogant about Bigfoot especially. First of all, if you're driving, you're not going to be looking around unless you're a horrible driver. So you better be keeping your eyes on the road. And what do people report? They see a Bigfoot when it runs in front of their car. At some point, the Bigfoot was at the side of the road. So people could have driven right by, it thought it was clear, and it went, and that's when a car went around the bend, and oh, damn, there it is, and it bolts off to get out of the way. And they only saw the Bigfoot because it ran in front of their vehicle. The people that were there before the guy probably drove right by it and never even knew it was there because it wasn't moving, and they were looking at the road, hopefully. Whereas if, you know, it runs in front of your car, you kind of can't help but see it. I think there's a lot of cases where people go right by a Bigfoot, possibly. I'm not saying they're everywhere at any time, no matter where you're at. But I think there are a lot of cases where people do walk right by a Bigfoot and they never even see it because it's holding still. It may not even be pretending to be like a tree and doing the freeze response, but it may just be watching them, and people don't even recognize it's there because it blends in just well enough, and it's not moving, and they're not looking for it, and it didn't catch their attention. But especially if it's freezing and it looks like a tree stump, a high-cut tree stump, yeah, people aren't going to notice it. And this goes into the explanation about thermals. What happens with the freeze response? Well, it slows your heart rate down quite a bit, doesn't it? What happens to your blood that's being pumped around your body? It slows down. All of a sudden now your blood isn't really pumping very hard. Blood pumping through your body does generate heat. And if you have a physical barrier between your body and the air around you, if your heart's slowing down and it starts really slowing heavily, you're not moving a whole lot, your blood isn't pumping real hard, you're not generating so much heat, any heat that is there is probably being retained and not being, I have the word, it's right there at the tip of my tongue, it isn't being radiated out from your body, from your clothing, or in this case, from your hairy body, and a thermal probably wouldn't recognize you anymore because now your body temperature is blending in with its environment. Doesn't mean that the body itself is lowering down to the temperature of the environment. It just means that it's lowering down enough and it's not radiating enough heat for that heat to get through the thermal barrier that is the hair of the animal. So that hair is kind of retaining enough heat close to the body, but not on the outside of the body. The stuff on the outside of the body is cooling off because of the air around it, especially if it's real breezy and it's cooling down the outside of the body. I don't think thermal would really recognize it anymore. And a lot of thermals aren't that good. It does me no good if I can't recognize what I'm looking at. There have been some clips I've seen on like Expedition X, and it's like, I can't even make out what I'm looking at. They're telling me that's the tree canopy. I can't tell. It's all just blobs and blurs of color. I can't make heads or tails out of what I'm looking at. And when you're looking at a Bigfoot figure walking around, you just see some little bits and pieces of red or whatever the color scheme is for the thermal. You're seeing some heat as it's supposed to be shown. It's just color though, color blobs, and then the color blobs kind of fade away and now it blends into the environment. You can't make heads or tails of what you're looking at. Pulsars seem to be more like a traditional camera with a thermal element added in, so you can see everything sharp, crystal clear, and you can see the heat coming off of the body. So is it more accurate? Probably not, but I do think it's a lot easier to look at. When you're looking at a Flir, like a lot of these TV shows like to use, I think it's pretty easy for the heat signature to just disappear from your sight, at least in such a way that you can actually see it. And that's assuming that they're more accurate. They may not be, right? I don't know. I'm not the kind of guy that really understands that technology, and I'd have to be going off of their promotional material. So I don't know. If you know, please let me know in the comment section down below. But nonetheless, I do believe that they can escape from thermals, especially if there's any kind of breeze out and about, kind of cooling off the outside of the body. Because you got to remember, you're dealing with creatures with a lot of hair. You're not dealing with a thin layer of hair for like what you have on my dog here, where it's a very close coat. You're looking at something with a lot of hair. And I think that it does allow the heat to kind of dissipate on the outside of the body, but not right next to the skin. But especially if it's a really hot summer night, which is when a lot of people do Bigfoot research. It's not in the winter, fall, spring, when it's better weather to kind of be out there. It's typically in summer because that's when people have time off, or that's when people feel like being out there. And yeah, in hot night air, maybe not hot night air, but warmer night air, I do believe it would be even easier for a Bigfoot's thermal image to kind of disappear, especially if it's away from you, it's not close, and it gets any kind of brush in between it and you. Yeah, I think it can disappear from your thermal pretty quickly. Thermals are horrible with forest cover, forest canopy, especially if everything's wet. If the Bigfoot gets wet, that's going to start ruining things. Thermals are not fantastic. They're nice, but they're not fantastic. It's better than your typical infrared, night shot mode like on my Sony here, but it's not fantastic. It's not an end-all, do-all. People tend to make technology out to be a fantastic thing, and calm yourself a little bit. Curb your enthusiasm. It's nice, but it's not fantastic. There are certainly restrictions to it. It's not going to work no matter the situation because it's variable. You have to be prepared for it to fail, and you have to be prepared for it to just not do quite as good of a job as you're expecting. I love trail cameras. I think they are the future of Bigfoot research, but a lot of people look at them as if they're perfect. No, they are not. I already did video on that, and I'm making an entire documentary on that, by the way. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm hoping to get it out within the next couple months, but we'll see how things go. Regardless, though, I thought this was interesting. If you've ever had an experience where you've met someone, you could just tell their energy was off. You could tell something was wrong. If you've ever had an experience where you felt Bigfoot's presence before you actually saw it, because that's something that's reported a lot, I mean, you can tell when someone's staring daggers at you. And, I'd like to hear if you've ever had that kind of experience. I think that is partially why Bigfoot is able to avoid some of these guys who are looking to kill it, because now you have it on your radar. You are actively looking to shoot and kill it. And I think there is just, I think we are able to kind of send out a message somehow with our energy. I don't think it's something we can really understand at this point, but you can tell when someone has it out for you, even if they're really trying hard to keep a poker face about it. You can tell when someone just does not have your best interests at heart and you're on the menu, so to speak. And especially if you're looking to actually kill, I think there are times when people may have gotten close to a Bigfoot, but it felt that energy was wrong and it went nope, and it noped out of there, went the other direction. And that could very well be an explanation for it. I know a lot of people don't like that. Oh, there's special pleading. I don't really care how you feel. That's just my thoughts on it. I'm not going to make strong posits on that, stating that it's fact. Don't lick the couch. You know better. Yeah. But I do think that it is possible at times, because some of these guys that are going out there, I mean, they're gung-ho on killing a Bigfoot. And I think you are just exuding that kind of negative energy out there. I know whenever I've been looking to kill a deer, I mean, I'm not doing it for sport, I'm doing it for meat, but still, that's when I don't see them. It's when I'm, just kind of out and about, having fun, relaxing, that's when I see them. Is there something to that? I don't know. Obviously, there are ways to get around those issues, right? Guys who are looking to kill an elk still kill an elk. Guys who are looking to kill deer still kill deer. I know I have. But I do believe that if you aren't fully prepared to really give it all you got, if you're out there just trying to kill a Bigfoot and you're on your own, I don't think it's going to work. And even with friends and family and people pushing, doing the deer drive type thing I was talking about, I don't support killing a Bigfoot, but I think that you do face problems even then. But I think you have a much higher likelihood of actually shooting one, because now you're actually controlling the environment more. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. I'm not really prepared to go into that. I probably shouldn't have, because I'm going to get a bunch of comments that are questioning me. But still, if you have had any experiences where you felt like someone was staring daggers at you and you want to share, I would love to know, because I think it would support my video here and my arguments if you could discuss if you've ever caught a Bigfoot on a thermal and what that was like. Anything like that. I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys. A lot of people don't tend to comment, and I love it when you guys comment. The only time I don't like getting comments is when they're nasty. You don't need to worry about that too much. I'm still pretty patient with people. So if you could please like this video, share it by clicking the share button down below, copying link, sharing it wherever you feel it's appropriate. And if you could please subscribe to the channel and just share your thoughts, again, in the comment section down below. That would really help support the channel. And this one was much more of a opinion piece than usual. Typically, I have a lot of evidence that I can provide for my arguments. This one, not as much, but I think you can see where I'm going with it. And hopefully you can understand. If you have any more evidence, any more arguments that you can put forward and experiences, that would be fantastic. So thank you guys so very much. I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.